Hey everyone, welcome to another month in my bullet journal. Today we're going to be setting up September in my journal. September's theme is a whimsical theme featuring my dogs in space. This theme particularly works out because it is my youngest's birthday month. So what better way to celebrate him than have him go on an adventure with his brother in space? Fortunately for me, I have quite a few celestial themed items, so it made setting this up quite easy. I just picked out the pages from the Archer and Olive Night pages that came in one of the subscription boxes for the decorative paper for this theme. I don't need a lot of them, but I did want to make sure that I had a good variety in case I decided to use more of the paper than I had thought at first. But I really wanted this moon on the cover page, especially because I decided to do a Dutch door cover page. And then because I waste not, want not, I have tried to use as much of this page as I possibly could on the cover page as well. But as you can see, I'm also adding the dark navy celestial washi, also from Archer and Olive. I think it was the same subscription box that the paper came in, so that kind of worked out. It does go with it really well, and I'm just kind of like overlapping them a little bit just to create some depth. I decided to do all the header fonts with the Arrtx acrylic marker in the silver. And the font I'm using for all the headers is called Space Gome off of Fontspace. I really like using Fontspace for my fonts because you don't have to download the font. You can kind of preview the font and then you can copy the font from the preview, and you can preview whatever text you want it to say. This is especially great for fonts like this font because different combinations of letters will make this font do special characters. So you get to have a bit of variety when it comes to the actual font that you have picked, and you get to preview what the font looks like in different words that you might be using throughout the month. As you can see, this silver metallic marker is crazy sparkly, so it's going to be really reflective for the entire setup, and it will probably make my camera do weird things, and for that I apologize. But for my dog drawings, I'm going in with the lighter colors first because my dogs are German Shepherds. They are primarily black and tan, so you're going to see a lot of really dark on these guys because my guys are primarily black instead of tan. So there's going to be a lot of black on these dogs. I will try to add some depth with the black Pigma Micron brush pen just to add some definition. But they are what they are, and they are super cute, so hopefully my drawings come through with their cuteness. I am working off of references, which is why you can see my phone in the corner there. I'm using it for the reference pictures if I haven't already printed them. But basically I found pictures of them where they were kind of laying down in like floating type poses, and just tried my best to copy those poses as best I could to kind of make it look like they were floating in space. My second dog is slightly less fluffy than the first dog that was drawn here, so he should hopefully take a little bit less time to color in. But again, I've done the same process, starting with the super light yellow and then going in with the golden tan color, and then I'll go over with the really dark brown and then add the definition with the brush pen in the black. Hopefully I've done justice to the markings on my dogs for the drawings. They are pretty distinct in how they look, so hopefully I've captured their essence well enough in my drawings. To me, it's pretty obvious which drawings are who, but they are my dogs, so it is easier for me to spot which one is actually the one that I drew. But I'll add some pictures into this video so you guys can tell me, how did I do with recreating my dogs in drawings? And no drawings of dogs would be complete without their little toe beans. I'm just going to use the Arrtx white marker to add some reflections, and then you guys tell me, how did I do? Do they look like my guys? I think so. And of course, safety first, so they need their little space helmets to keep them safe in space when they're on their adventures. This is where the Gellyroll Metallic silver gel pen came in clutch. And since my boys are safe from the vacuum of space, I'm going to move on to the quote for September, which is from Coldplay's Sky Full of Stars. You're a sky full of stars, such a heavenly view. I've just done the quote in my handwriting. I didn't feel like doing it in the header font. I thought it would take up too much space, so I just did, you know, a quick handwriting of it. And that will take care of my cover page for September. Moving on to my calendar / content planning page. This content dashboard has become a lifesaver this year. To recreate it, all you need to do is have a couple of columns. I like the first column to have 8 dot grid spaces, followed by however many columns you need for tracking. I have 7, and those are 2 dot grid spaces wide each. My mini calendar is 2 dot grid spaces wide by 2 dot grid spaces tall. This is just so I can see visually the days when I go to plan my content. Once again, I'm using the scraps from the last decorative paper that I used to decorate the corners of this page. I'm also going to be using the washi tape. Again, I'm just going to be taking off some washi tape and putting it into my washi tape graveyard so that I can still see the entirety of this dashboard. But that was the only way I could make it all fit. As you can see on the left-hand side, I have a bunch of headshots of my dogs, which I will be using on various spreads throughout this theme as decoration. I'm going to be using the same silver acrylic marker for the header on this page. I've decided to use the shortened version of September to save myself a little bit of room, because I still want to decorate this page and I need a little bit more space to do so. As promised, I'm using these headshots as decorations, which means I have to color them in. So once again, I'm starting with the lightest of my markers and then going over some of the areas with the tan, trying really hard to accurately capture their coloring, and then doing the majority of them in the really dark brown, and then I'm going to be using some accents with the Sakura Pigma brush pen for the black. This did take me quite a while to do, so please enjoy the very much sped up version of me coloring in these headshots. Because I had all the markers out already and I was kind of in the coloring groove, I decided to do all of the headshots at the same time. I think I also didn't want both of the open mouth, like smiling headshots on the same spread for this. So I, wanted to be able to pick and choose the more serious faces versus the smiling faces. Once I had everything colored, it was time to cut these out so I can stick them into my journal however I need to. I'm just cutting a tiny white border around each of the headshots, and then I'm cutting them off as much as I can at the bottom to kind of maximize and make sure that they look like they belong in the journal. And I did decide to go with one smiling and one serious face. And of course, our smiling face has to be upside down. It has to. It just makes the most sense. This is where the glue tape comes in handy because you can kind of just, trace it on as much as you want. It also rubs off of the page really nicely if you happen to get extra on the page that you don't need there. I'm just using the washi as the template for their helmets. Just made it a little bit easier. Unfortunately, the smiling face one, his face is so long that it took me a bit to kind of figure out where the helmet was going to go. So I had to play around with that quite a bit off camera. But once I was happy with the boys and their helmets, I decided to add a little bit more decoration onto this page. And of course, I needed to number each of the days of the week on the calendar. Moving on to my trackers. For my mood tracker, I decided to do a modified solar system with a lot of stars around it. And a theme about my dogs wouldn't be complete without a visit from one of them. What are you doing? Did you come see? Yeah? Hi. Hi, buddy. As I said, the moon tracker for this month is a modified solar system. It has 8 planets. Should have been 9. I think I forgot one of the planets, but that's okay. Pluto will forgive me, I hope. I do make up for it with a lot of stars around it. I have 30 of the stars and planets because September has 30 days. My habit tracker and my weather tracker are going to be the usual mini calendars. I find those the easiest to track with. So it just makes the most sense that I continue to use those when I can. I just used my circular template to add in the connecting circles for my mood tracker to complete the solar system look. I'd be really careful with the lines on this tracker. This pen is really juicy. It doesn't dry very quickly, and as you can see, I kind of made some drag marks when I moved my ruler, so I just went in later with a white paint marker and covered those up as best I could. What good is a tracker without a key? So at the bottom here, I'm just incorporating 4 boxes with 4 different moods. as well as numbering each of my elements to make sure I know which day is tricked with which element and which color from the key. Just trying to tidy up these trackers just a little bit with the white paint marker. Once again, going in with the acrylic silver marker for the headers. Because this took a while, I'm going to speed it up for you guys so you don't have to sit through all of me doing the header fonts. I also need to include a key for the weather. Now that everything functional is on the spread, I'm going to make it pretty. So I'll be ripping some washi tape to make it fit on the top and bottom of this spread. And anything I don't use will be going into the washi graveyard in the back of this journal. What good is a solar system without a sun? So I've colored the middle planet with the tan color I've been using for the dogs. And then I realized I needed some extra decoration, so I ripped up some corners and I'll be adding those on to the corners of this spread. But that's all the decoration I'm going to do for now on those pages, so I'm going to move on to the miscellaneous trackers in my journal. The miscellaneous trackers are for some personal stats that I track month after month, all of the media that I watch in a month, so TV shows, movies, YouTube channels that I'm particularly enjoying. They all get logged on this spread, as well as a space for notes. You'll notice that the notes space is relatively small. This is because I don't generally use the notes space that much. It's usually just, you know, 1 or 2 lines about a overarching monthly note that I'll use. I do have quite a bit of space on my weeklies, so anything I usually want to remember I'll put on my weeklies, but an overarching reminder for the month sometimes goes into the notes section. And of course I have to decorate. I'm not sure where the rest of the recordings for the decoration for that went, but we'll move on to the meals tracking spread. As always, I create a Dutch door for the meal tracker, and then I have a header that just says meals, and each of these spreads will be divided into 7 spaces with 3 columns. So there's quite a bit of bullet journal math that goes into this spread. Each of the columns, or each of the rows, is 5 dot grid spaces tall. That includes the bottom border space, so 5 dot grid spaces from the bottom border. Then each of the columns are as follows. The first column is 3 dot grid spaces, including the border column. And then there is another column that is 8 dot grid spaces, followed by another column that's 8 dot grid spaces. And then the remainder makes up the rest of your final column. I know it sounds complicated, but it does work. It is featured in my dot grid space grid spacing guide at the back of my journal, so all I have to do is reference that every time I want to make this spread, and I know exactly what I have to do without having to do the bullet journal math every single time I want to do this spread. I did actually have to take off 2 columns on the very first page of this because September only has 5 days in the first week, but it does give me some extra room for decoration. So I'm just going to be ripping up this page a little bit more because I was left with just this one kind of cornery piece. I kind of created my own edges when I was folding the paper so that I could get some nice edges for the edge of the page, and then, you know, made it work from there. So the decoration on this page might look a little asymmetrical when everything is said and done, but I think it's going to work out for the best. I quite enjoy how this ended up looking. And then all that's left to do is put the initial for the day and the date in the first column of each of these pages. And because this process takes a little bit, I've sped it up for you guys. With meal tracking nearly complete, we're moving on to the first weekly in September. As mentioned, the first week in September only consists of 5 days, so this spread is a thirds spread. Each page has been divided into thirds, which gives you 6 total spaces, and then I have 1 space for decoration and 5 spaces for planning. It is important when planning a theme that you make sure that you have consistent elements throughout your theme. So I've accomplished that with the washi that I've used, the drawings of my dogs, and the decorative paper that I'm using on the corners. Sometimes you need to move things around and play around with your elements to make everything feel cohesive, but once you figure out a good balance, you're usually happy with all your elements. This was another situation where it took me a really long time to figure out exactly how big to make this helmet on this particular dog's head. I've discovered that this boy has a very large head. I think he has a very long snout, which elongates his head quite a bit and makes it a little tricky to create a helmet for him. But as you can see, I just had to use my circular template that I use quite a bit to create his helmet. Next, I'm doing the full days of the week for the headers. I'm just using the Gellyroll Metallic pen for this. Makes this font a little bit quicker because you're not doing essentially bubble letters with the font if you use the Gellyroll pen to do the font instead of the acrylic marker. And I know the light reflecting off of that pen is making it seem like I didn't write Saturday, but I promise you I did. And because I'm down to my last actual colored in headshot, I needed to color some more. On my journal there is actually the pictures that I was using for reference for these drawings. So hopefully I did them justice. But I'll speed up the process a little bit for you guys because, again, this whole layering thing took me quite a while. Now that I have a stockpile of headshot drawings, I'm going to be moving on to the second weekly for September. This weekly I affectionately call straight 8 because there are 8 spaces and they are in straight lines. So each of your pages is divided into 4 quadrants, and then you can create your weeklies from there. I'm going to be adding some decoration on days that I don't usually have a lot going on. Will just help me add some decoration to the page without compromising the actual planning space for the rest of the week. Also trying really hard to use up every single piece of this decorative paper that I possibly can, because I don't like having leftover paper at the end of my setups, especially because I feel really bad for throwing out little scraps of really pretty paper. I have an entire drawer of pretty paper, guys. I really don't need to keep any more, but I still will if I have any left over. So I try to use up as much of the decorative paper as I can when I'm using it in a theme. Now that we have our decoration, it is important that we have our functional part of the spread. So I'm just going to be doing the first 3 letters of each of the days of the week for the headers using the Gellyroll Metallic Silver. And I will be using the same thing for the dates. One quick flip back to make sure that I have the correct dates, and that will be it for this weekly for now. For the 3rd September weekly, I will be once again dividing the page into 3, but then I will also be dividing that page in half as well, so I get 6 boxes on each page. This leaves lots of space for decoration, so I have 5 spaces for decoration and 7 spaces for planning. One of those 5 spaces is going to have my September heading, which is only the first 4 letters of September. And I will have both of my boys on this spread with their very serious faces. You might notice that I have the decorations strategically placed on this spread. It is so that I know which of these boxes I've designated for decoration and which of the boxes I've designated for actual planning. With a spread like this, it is really easy to kind of misplace where you wanted to put stuff if you're not careful. So I try to make sure that I know where everything is going before I put anything down. You could also do it the opposite way, where you put your planning down first and then your decoration. But I know I needed to cut out the dogs, so when I was cutting out the dogs, I was making sure I had the decoration to go with the dogs as well. As always, we need to make sure that we have all of the elements for our theme to make sure that we have a cohesive theme. So little bits of the nice navy washi tape are going down to solidify the theme. I'm just going to put this little teeny piece here. That particular piece of paper was kind of sticking up a little bit. So pro tip, if you have a element that's not sticking to your page as well as you would like it to, put a little piece of washi tape over it and it will help stick it down. Once again, I'm just doing the first 3 letters of the date, and then I'm going to number each of the pages and make sure that my boys are protected in space. Once again, this particular head portrait is a lot larger and longer than the washi tape rules, so I have to get a little bit creative with the stencil to make sure that he has a helmet and he's protected. On to the 4th full weekly in September. This is also the final full weekly in September. I'm doing a Dutch door spread for this one. So I divided the page into quarters horizontally, and then I created the Dutch door by taking the top two sections on each side off. So you end up with 8 horizontal sections at the bottom of the page, and then you end up with decoration for the top of the page. If you're wondering why I didn't flip the page and do the rest of the lines, it's because these particular pens take a while to dry, so while I was waiting for the pen to dry, I was going to do the September header, and I have room for the full September word. I've also got my dogs floating upside down. This particular pose I'm currently coloring is my younger dog. He does what we refer to as turtling, where he just kind of rolls onto his back and pretends to stay there for a while. It's truly hilarious. He looks like such a goof when he does it, and I really wanted to incorporate this particular pose into this theme because it's just so funny when he does it. And I wanted to, share the joy of this particular pose of his with everybody. So hopefully, while I'm coloring this, it will come together and you guys will fully appreciate just the ridiculousness that is what happens when my youngest turtles. My second dog here, he's my older dog. He is a giant baby, and he tends to kind of lay down on his side, a little bit curled up, and we call it setting a trap. So in this one, he has currently set a trap for you to rub his belly, and that's what I'm trying to capture with this doodle. Again, it's just layers of the colors, making sure that I'm building as I go to get all those details to really bring these guys to life. And once again, safety first, so they need their helmets for their trek into space. Thankfully, this one was a little bit farther back, so it was easier to get him into his helmet easily instead of with the stencil. Because I have a lot of horizontal space on this particular spread, I'm going to be using the full days instead of the shortened days, and then I'm going to make sure that I have the correct date by just flipping back quickly and double checking on the previous spread. I know it's really hard to see the silver on the page when the light is hitting it, but I promise it does say Tuesday there, and it will say Wednesday underneath. It's just really hard to see with the lighting from my ring light and with this silver pen. Just fixing a little spelling mistake that I did here with my white paint marker. And while I wait for the gel pen to dry, I'm going to be sticking down the pieces of the decorative paper onto the top of the spread to make sure that I have my elements that I need for this. I must have been satisfied with the dryness because I did flip that over. And I'll just put down some washi. And double check what I'm supposed to be doing next before I put pen to paper. So on this one, I'll have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and a notes section. can. I know it's really hard to see, but I promise it says Saturday and notes and not just nothing on those two sides there. And on to my final spread for September. This one is going to be a multi-purpose spread, so I will have meal planning underneath my actual planning. I've divided the page in half, and then each of the halves vertically is a day, so the last 4 days of September. I'm going to have the full September header instead of a shortened version. And each of the meal plannings are 2 dot grid spaces tall, and then each page is divided into 13 dot grid spaces each. So should be easy enough. It isn't quite half horizontally. I did extend it down a little bit, so it's more like 3/4 than actually half, but I think the balance works out nicely. But I'm going to cut out my last 2 headshots of my dogs. We have to finish out the month with them both smiling. So I will stick those down with my double-sided glue tape. Again, this stuff is great if you get it on sections of the page where it's not supposed to be, because you can rub it off, as you see me do there. And then we stick it down and everybody is happy. For this one, I decided to do the first 3 days of the day name, and then the date beside them. I didn't have quite enough room to do a good size header with the full days. And I'm trying very hard to use up the last of this paper that I've already pre-ripped. I'm not going to quite make it. I just don't have enough room to use the rest of it for this month. But I will probably keep the last little bit of this paper in my paper drawer. So hopefully I'll figure out something to use it for eventually, but I don't think I'm going to be doing another night theme for this year. But I think a valiant effort was made to use as much of this paper as I could when I kept ripping up pages to use for it. But safety first for my boys. They get their helmets, so they are safe on their adventure in space and can return home. And that wraps up September in my journal. I did go back and add some stars with the Sakura Gellyroll Metallic Silver gel pen. I just thought it added a little bit more decoration without having to do too much. But I am very much looking forward to getting into September and celebrating my youngest dog's birthday near the end of the month, as well as enjoying seeing my goofy boys throughout the pages for the entire month of September. If you have any questions or comments about anything I used in this setup, please let me know in the comments, and I look forward to getting back to you with the answers. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next month. Bye.